Hey, welcome to the 424th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Kevin O'Brien and Reese Miles Thomas. I'm Matt Oren.
And I'm Oren Kaplan, and today we are talking odds and ends. We are catching up. We're talking about what we've been working on lately. We've got literally an array of unrelated topics, except for that they're just things that have been on our mind recently.
It's a day in the life of a working filmmaker.
Yeah, like a week in the life.
Yeah.
I challenge you to listen to this whole episode and not find at least one of these things relatable to what you're working on in your life.
100%. Just jumping straight in.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk actually about some stuff at work. So regular listeners of the show know that I've been show running at a digital company for a while now. And it's been really great. And also the season is winding down and I am transitioning off of the project.
So you did a whole season from episode 1 to episode 50?
46.
46. Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So An episode a week for 46 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Not as impressive as 424 episodes.
Yeah, not quite, but getting there. And, you know, I think it forces you to look back on what I've done on the show, what I am really proud of, what things I would have done differently. It's put me in a very introspective headspace. I told everyone today in our morning meeting, and we have our Monday morning, we're recording on Monday night, but Monday morning meeting where, you know, we walk through the week and all of that. And it was a work from home day. And so there was a lot of like shocked emoji faces in the chat.
Wait, so people really had no idea that you were going to kind of leave your position?
No, you know, it's hard to say, but for the most part, I don't think so.
It's worth noting, and I think you kind of said it, that you're staying with the company. You're just going to a different department and you'll be working with different people.
Yeah. I think it'll be much more project based and much more like in the commercial world, frankly, basically. Like I won't be working with a writer's room. I'll still have a post department and, you know, I'll be doing kind of the
more like the branded stuff.
More the branded stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, it's put me in a funny headspace.
The funniest thing, whenever I've like told people I'm leaving, I'm always like hoping they'll be so sad.
Of course.
And they're usually like, okay. I'm like, I can stay for a few weeks, you know, as long as you need me. They're like, nah, it's cool. And you're like, no, but like, I'm kind of the heart of this organization. They're like, we have a lot of hearts.
Yeah. I am going to be on for like around a month or two still. So, you know, I will be like training my successor and all of that stuff, which will be interesting. But I think that the reality is for almost everyone, 99% of the people, as soon as they hear a coworker of theirs is leaving, they're like, oh, bummer. How does this affect me?
Right.
Is there opportunity? Does it make my job worse? Yeah. Can I have their office? Does this give me more power? Can I get a raise? Do I get a title bump? That's immediately what people are thinking about, I think, for the most part. And so the people who I help the most and who I'm the least competitive with are the most sad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's good. At least you got some sad people.
Yeah, I got some sad people. I think everyone's a little bit sad, but you know.
If any of our listeners work with me in the future and I tell you that I'm going to stop working with you.
Yeah, just sob
uncontrollably. A few tears would be very appreciated. It feels good to be in demand, you know.
So big changes over in Camp Enlow. The other thing, before we get into your crazy whirlwind of very different disparate topics, it's very early, but we have been reaching out to people, actors, on the feature, and I'm setting a coffee for like a known person, a person who my parents don't know who they are, but my parents don't know who many people are, but who I could describe them on one of their shows, and then they could be like, oh yeah, that guy, great. So I've made offers to, I don't know how many actors over the years. And they all, like, I've had phone calls and this and that, but I really was angling for coffees on this round of offers specifically because I feel like it just gives, it's a more human touch. It's a more intimate way and professional way to kind of like get to know somebody and make sure that we all click, because it's very strange to be offering people roles based off of like the other roles that they've done, right? Especially if they're characters who are a little bit on the younger side. Actors are often victims to the movies and TV shows that they have been in. So I wanted to ask you, Oren.
Yes.
What would you do to prepare for a coffee with an actor?
That's a good question, because so the last couple of weeks, I was just telling you, I worked with kind of three, kind of somewhat famous actors, I think.
But you'd already booked the job. It's different in so much as these are commercials, right? So they're like, hey, I'm going to take a very large check and I'm going to approve this director and work with you intimately, but you're not convincing them to do an indie film, which is a different deal.
Yes, right. You're totally right. And it is different. But I guess for me, the context of like just preparing to talk to them made me think a little bit about this topic, which is why it's kind of fresh in my mind, which is like, we're fans of all actors, right? Like one of the actors I worked with is on a very famous TV show that I had never seen, I tried to, obviously, like I look them up on like Wikipedia, I Google them, I see, as stupid as this sounds, like I see if they have kids, where they live. I try to find them on Instagram. I try to like start finding the things I have in common with them that will be like easy talking points, to kind of like good small talk stuff, So like, one of the actors I just worked with, I happen to know that she lives in in Silver Lake, in my neighborhood. Another actor, you told me that he's friends with some of our common DP friends, so it's like, I try to find like the things that will grease the conversation so that it's not like there's so many people out there that'll be like, oh, I'm a huge fan. You're so awesome in this. Sure. And like, you're so good. You're such a good actor. And I don't think that stuff like brings a lot of value to the conversation unless it's like hyper specific, unless you're like, hey, I saw you in this episode of this show and you did this thing. And that's when I realized like, oh, like I based one of the traits of my character on that scene because I just love the way you played these two parts.
You're right. Yeah. I think that's really, really sage advice, because also when you're, especially when you're in a kind of a commercial environment, they're there for the paycheck, right? They're not there for the passion. It's not like they're such huge fans of Doritos that they had to say yes, right? And so it's a little odd. It's a little strange. Their agents are often there. They'll have a team. They're bringing in their glam. It's just kind of like they're pretty insulated. So having human ways in where you can be like, hey, I'm going to show you that you're a person to me, I think is really valuable. Similarly, when I was writing this actor, the love letter that I sent them, I'd found similarly, Oren, like a little bit of frustration in like watching their material, trying to find a thing that spoke to me. And it's like, oh, they're just a good actor in general. Here's, I think that they fit the role for XYZ reasons, but it's really hard unless you can be just super hyper specific. It never felt especially convincing or compelling in any way. So what I did was I started listening while I was driving places to interviews that they'd done in podcasts. And then all of a sudden, similarly, like looking them up on Instagram or whatever, I had personal touch points where I could be like, hey, just like this, I grew up in this town, or, I did this play in high school and it really changed my life as well. Just like little things that show you did your homework.
Research, yeah.
Yeah. And also that we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
One other tip that just came to mind, and something I love and you also like is like, we're really into process. Like I like to treat actors, whether they're famous or not famous, as like my peers, my coworkers and colleagues. And so like, I happen to know who you're having your meeting with, and he was in a very, very famous, like Oscar contending movie. And he had some interesting scenes in it. And like, I think we've seen some behind the scenes of how they did some of it, but I think like even coming in and saying like, hey, that scene was so cool. Did you do it like this or like this? Or like when you were configured like this, was that with wires or was that with green screen? Like, I think coming in with curiosity, because it gives them a really easy way in to talk about process. And like this thing I shot last week, we had one of our actors is on a science fiction show, and we were kind of copying one of the things that happens in her show. And so I was like, hey, this is my plan of how to shoot this, but how did you guys shoot this when you were on set, you know? Because there were some visual effects involved. And so, you know, it's fun to just just be curious about their shows. Even the actress I worked with last week in Mexico, who was on a show that has been she's been on many different shows, but the show that made her famous has been off the air for like 10 years or something. I talked to her a lot about that show and how, like, was it scripted? Was it improvised? Like when you guys smoked, was that like scripted? How did you keep track of that? Like, you know, I just think when you start getting into the details of how people do their work that ends up winning them awards, I think they're much more interested than just hearing how much you think they're great or how much you think the writing or the cinematography or the things that they didn't really have much control of are great.
And it's a one-sided conversation. You're just saying, hey, I think you're great. I think you're great. I think you're great. Instead of how were you great in these specific ways is a totally different conversation. It also gives you a chance to show them what's important to you. Right. So even, Oren, as you were describing, like, oh, this person was in like a pretty VFX-y movie. And you were saying like, oh, how did they shoot that? How did they do this? In my letter, I talk about how, because my movie has plenty of VFX as well, but that I'm really trying to prioritize an environment where it's grounded in a human enough experience so that you can get a great performance from them, you know, like, which I think is quite trendy nowadays. But back when green screen was like a much newer technology for people, like, you know, Ewan McGregor developed a drinking problem because of just shooting alone in a green screen cove during all those Star Wars movies, you know, just gets depressed. But so like, it's not only how did you guys do this, but like, what were the things that you did that helped ground this outlandish performance? You know, if you have to talk to a robot that's not there, what do you do? Like, how can I help you bring your character to life in a meaningful way? I think it'll be interesting. That's great.
That's the one last thing that I was going to add. But you kind of touched on it already, which is like talking to actors about how they work, you know? Like, so what's your, like, how do you like to work? Are you like one take person, or do you like to rehearse a lot? Or, you know, just kind of just.
What school you come from? Yeah. Well, and we often work with stand-up comics who are like quite technical, right?
They're like, I stand up enough at work. You better put me sitting in this scene, or else
no respect. I think that's great. I have a couple practical questions for you. So say the meeting is at like 2:00.
Oof.
And
horrible
it's at
time.
Olive Time. Do you know Olive Time?
Yeah, I know all of the various times.
So Olive Time, for people, I'm throwing it out there because it's a cafe that it's right near Warner Brothers. So it's like, I think it's exclusively industry people. It's like,
and it's right between Warner Brothers and Disney.
Yeah. And is, you know, like sandwiches and coffees and stuff. It's totally a place where you could order lunch. They sell lunches all the time, or just coffees. So the reason I'm throwing it out there is that it's not like you're going to a sushi restaurant. You're not going to a place where obviously you only order a meal at this restaurant. It's really up in the air. And I said 2:00 because that's a late lunch.
Yeah, really late.
Or kind of a.
Does he live near there?
This is a for instance. No. I'm gonna let him call the shots on and where to go. But like, it could be Earth Cafe. It could be Olive and Time. There's all sorts of these places that are like right in that kind of pocket where like, oh yeah, you could get a muffin and a coffee. Totally normal. So what do you do? Okay. So who pays?
Oh, you pay, obviously. Yeah.
Right. Even though he's much wealthier than me. How do I decide if we eat or not?
I mean, my move is I always eat because I love eating. So I say, do you mind if I eat?
Yeah.
And then I just had this meeting with this like head honcho at Paramount. I think I might have told you about it, but he was like, "Oh, come to my hotel." There's a restaurant at the bottom, and he's like, "I already had breakfast." I was like, "Oh," and he's like, "Well, you can eat if you want." I was like, "Okay," and then I had a gigantic meal while he told me his life story. So I don't know. I like eating. Yeah. It's probably like gross. I'm not like the neatest eater.
I had a tuna fish sandwich at Olive and Time the last time I was there.
Yeah.
And I've really felt stupid for ordering it. And this was just with a friend. I wasn't looking to impress anyone.
Right.
And I was just like, oh.
I mean, I think if you want to talk a lot, you just do like a croissant type of deal if you're hungry. I mean, I'm like a big believer in eating when I'm hungry and also eating when I'm not hungry.
Sure, same. Yeah.
But I like, having stuff to do with my hands, being at a restaurant for a reason, like not feeling like people are waiting for me to leave the table,
Yeah, croissant's a nice move also because when I'm a little anxious, I will just kind of like eat or drink whatever is in front of me mindlessly. And if I get an iced coffee and down it in 10 minutes, the rest of that hour is going to be...
Oh, yeah. Jittery.
What do you wear?
I wear like kind of my cooler sneakers, jeans, and like kind of like my favorite button-down shirt, probably over a t-shirt or something.
Button down. So unbuttoned?
Like a couple buttons.
Yeah.
Maybe a hat, depending on how my hair is looking that day.
Yeah. So basically what I wear every day, though my sneakers could be cooler.
Yeah. I mean, I try to I would shave, I would kind of do I'm going I'm going to get a haircut. Like I'm going on a date,
Yeah. Or neither of us has gone on a date in 20 years.
No, like a date night, client dinner, agency,
Sure.
We've done things.
Yeah.
On my anniversary, we went somewhere, I think. We had dinner. I don't remember where, but we did something for sure.
Yeah, but I guess the reason I bring all of this up is because all of a sudden the stakes feel slightly different. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it forces you to think through.
Thirsty, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, it forces you to just, again, think through things a little bit more. Whereas at a client dinner or something like that, I would just freshen up, basically.
Yeah. It's kind of like an inverted interview situation. Because I guess you're interviewing each other. And it's kind of like a date, I guess.
I think it's worth it to be reminded that for as much as I want them to be the one, I have to make sure that they are right for the role. I shouldn't just offer a movie to this person if they're not right. I shouldn't be convincing anyone, basically.
I think you can convince people if you like them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
On that topic, I think we can kind of stay on this same topic, but hop to one of my things I listed, which is kind of shooting with celebrity names. Again, I'm not talking about Brad Pitt. I'm talking about a
recognizable people, for sure.
Main character from The Big Bang Theory, the level of celebrity. People that, you would probably recognize. Anyway, something I've noticed, because I shoot mainly commercials, is that we're casting these people that are famous for one thing, and we're trying to shoehorn them into a different thing, which is a commercial. So commercial, if it's a 15-second commercial or a 30-second commercial with an end tag, that means it's like a 12-second commercial or a 27-second commercial. These brands will pay these kind of familiar people a lot of money to be in these commercials, but these people are TV actors or film actors, and they're not used to talking at an insane speed. They take their time, they chew up the scenery, they say the dialogue, and I've just kind of...
what made them great, right?
Yeah. So
a great film actor or TV actor wouldn't walk into a room and be like, wow, this is delicious. They'd be like, wow.
Yeah.
This is delicious. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you need it to be as fast as the first take.
Exactly. Or I just worked with kind of a well-known comedian, and he likes to riff, and he'll be like, oh, hey, ho, kind of put in little words in between, because he's mainly a stand-up, but he's also has his own multicam show, has had multiple multicam shows. They're just not giving the dialogue in the same speed. And I'll be like, that was awesome. Let's just try a really fast one. And then they'll give it to me just just the same speed, basically. So one thing I've kind of been noticing about people that are famous for one thing that you're trying to shoehorn into another is that you really need to build the creative around their skills. And maybe they can be good. Maybe they can kind of give you some dialogue. Like that thing I did with Rebel Wilson. Like she is kind of known for this snappy dialogue, you know? So I think you can give her snappy dialogue in a commercial and she'll do it snappy, you know? But if you're casting people from a drama or from like a dramedy or from like someone from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend or something, then they might have like a rhythm or a cadence to their dialogue that's not quite right for commercial. So I don't know. I guess it came to mind because you're like, oh, I really like this actor because of this movie he was in and this show he was on. But does that mean he's right for my project?
For this or not? Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny. You make me think, I feel like we've both been the victim of the counterpoint in commercials where they cast, you know, someone who's famous for their character is famous for some sort of, you know, tick or catchphrase or something like that. And the commercial, they're just like, we'll get him to do the thing.
Oh, yeah.
The thing
yeah. Like that's when I did the Brian Baumgartner thing. He was on The Office and they wanted him to like be his character from the show. And he was like,
hi, I'm Kevin. I love bush beans.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to play Kevin.
He's like, no, that's not
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, like you are working with these actors that are like award winning, Oscar winning, Emmy, Golden Globe, People's Choice Award winning actors. And then you get these notes from the agency that's like, can they put the emphasis on how are you doing instead of how are you doing? And you have to give these like super dumb notes like, yeah, he was rolling his eyes, but like, can he roll his eyes to the left instead of up? And you as a director, your job is to go tell these like very successful actors that have been on a bazillion more sets than you have how to roll their eyes so that someone at Video Village gets it to be exactly how they were imagining it, even though it's like not any better, you know?
So this is a really circular part of our conversation. I'm really glad you brought this up because one of the things I will do when I'm talking to an actor to make them comfortable with me is like at the top of the day before anyone's mic'd up or can hear me or whatever, I kind of sit down and I'm like, hey, have you ever done a commercial? Or like, you know, if I know that they've done a bunch of commercials, you know that you and I are going to be on kind of the same wavelength and I'm going to get it the way you want it. I'm going to get it the way I want it. And then I'm going to go back to Video Village and hear the way that they want it. But sometimes they're going to want it a way that
we both think is ridiculous.
And we're on the same team. Sometimes they have final cut. Sometimes they can weigh in on things more than we can, you know, but it's a way to build rapport early on and also insulate yourself from those stupid notes. Right. And it comes from, I've told this story on the podcast many times, but I was doing spots with Ken Marino, who I admire very much and think is so funny. And he's a great director in his own right. And it wasn't until halfway through the second day, he covered up his microphone and literally was like, are they making you say these things to me? And I just was like, yes. And then at lunch we sat down and he was like, oh, he didn't say this, but he was like, oh, I thought you were an idiot. And when I'm coming up to tell him like, smile when you say, right, you know,
they want to see
deodorant or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And it was smooth sailings from that on out. But so I always take that to heart as like a way of making sure that the actors know, you know, and again, you ally with them in that way.
Yeah, that's smart. And like you said, because the actors are wearing microphones, you can't say like, oh, this is a super stupid note, but the agency wants you to do this thing.
Yeah. And also, frankly, you do need them to do a good job. Like we both have had situations where it's like, I don't think this will work, but if you undercut it, it won't work.
Right.
And maybe it could work. And either way, the worst case scenario is that like some creative gets it in their head that this is the way it's supposed to be. Oftentimes the copywriter who wrote it and like, you know, thinks that that's the way the line read is and will insist on that take in the edit, whether it's better or not. So you need to get it as good as you can get it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's your job to kind of translate the note. Like the other day, I just kept getting this note about this actress I was working with. Like, can you just do it with like more energy? And it's like, that's like not a great note to give someone. So I was just like, hey, can you just do a loud take? Like, let's just do one super loud take. You're not talking to the guy next to you. You're talking to everyone on the stage. And she was like, yeah, I'll give you a loud take. And, and that's the same thing.
That's what they wanted. Yeah. I would say maybe like to the room rather than like, yeah.
And the other thing is, when we work with TV actors, they're used to like doing 3-4 takes and they're done. They're moving on. So that's like my biggest thing in the morning. I'm like, I do the similar thing, like, just reminding you this is a commercial and it's like there's multiple layers of approvals and sensitivities to very weird things that won't make any sense to us.
Yeah.
But just be prepared. We're probably going to do like 10 to 15 takes on every single line of your dialogue. So please don't hate me,
Sure. Yeah.
Just know that it's not like I will try to move on when I think we got it, and when you feel like you got it, but there's a good chance we'll just keep doing lines over and over.
Yeah.
It is sometimes because of the timing. Like, hey, you're shooting a 15, like the thing I did in LA a couple weeks ago with our friend's friend was like, the line has to hit 6 seconds and we do a take and he'd be like, what was that? I'll be like 7.4. He's like, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Sure. Well, and that's interesting in terms of like what language they speak, to a method actor. And look, being a method actor in a commercial environment is a tricky thing, but that wouldn't be motivating. But to a comic, I think actually it can make a ton of sense. So like, oh, this is a concrete, finite thing. It's not good or bad. It's fast or slow,
Yeah. And in awkward pause, I've always been a believer that it's like all relative. So if you need to fit an awkward pause in 6 seconds, then instead of making the dialogue like 5 seconds and the awkward pause 1 second, try to squeeze that dialogue into 4 seconds. And then you have like that it's all the length of the pause is relative to how fast everyone's talking, right? So if I'm talking really fast and then I pause for like 1 second, then that's like that, you can feel that pause enough, But if you're like talking slowly, taking your time, like hobbling through sentences, it's hard to tell that a pause is awkward,
Yeah. That's a great, very technical note for sure that I bet some people like and some people have a harder time wrapping their heads around.
Yeah. So on that note, just one other topic, which we've covered before, but like when you're doing things that have to hit certain times, especially like short form commercials, shorts, whatever, interstitials, like just time your scripts. And if your script hits 32 seconds, then it will never, ever fit in a 30. Just know that. Because right now I'm going through this thing. I have a 30-second commercial for TV. It has to be exactly 30 seconds on the frame. The first edit was 40 seconds. And the editor got it down to 36 seconds with wall-to-wall dialogue. So, and extracting that next 6 seconds is really difficult.
It has to be cuts, right? It's impossible.
Yeah. And, recently I've kind of been trying to shoot like less coverage because I'm trying to make the shots more interesting. And so it's like we're doing all sorts of insane tricks, like face replacement, like adding elements that wipe the frame that seem like they're part of the environment in order to like upcut, a piece of dialogue, trying to 110% speed the clip, and then pitch the shift the pitch down a little bit so the dialogue sounds right.
Yeah,
all the tricks,
man. Did you cut an animatic?
No, not for that one. But we had boards. I could have cut an animatic that would have fit, but this kind of goes back to like me reading it at my speed. And I'm like, well, if I say it fast, also telling the creatives like, hey, this is running a little bit long. Look, this is me reading it. It's hitting like 32 seconds. So like, let's think of some things to cut. And then they come back and they add words because the client asked for this extra word and this extra word and this qualification. And me saying like, okay, well, it's long. Like, what should we do? They're like, yeah, just shoot it. We'll figure it out. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think
it makes my blood boil because
Yeah, because it happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
And they don't trust us, who are kind of the experts in timing.
And I told you so doesn't feel good. Like we're still stuck with a spot that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, well, you know.
And no one wants to hire you again because you told them so.
Right. Totally. And so, you know, I'm always like dreaming of like, can we just do a couple takes where we cut this line so that it works, so that we're sure we've got it covered just in case.
Yeah. So it's hard though when you have to shoot like 2 spots in one day. So you have 4 hours to shoot a spot in 2 different locations. And it's like, you got to get the camera move right. And the extras have to move right. And this move and this gag and this. And then like, oh, also you want 2 versions and you want to shoot some coverage. So for 2 different sizes. So now you've like made this take 4 times as long.
Yeah. Well, and look, it's easier said when it's like a dialogue piece. If it's like 2 funny friends sitting on a couch and you've got, you know, the most interesting versions that you can think of 2 singles, 2 dirties, a 2-shot and a master, you know.
Yeah.
You can cut that dialogue without it being a thing.
You know me, I shoot a lot of stuff where the actors are talking straight to camera.
Sure.
So there are not, there's only one angle you can shoot. It's the angle that is looking at their face.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 different shots you can do. You can do a wide and you can do like a medium close up.
You know, you conjure though, the shot that I hate, maybe the most, is the 3/4, like when the character is clearly talking to a cam.
Oh yeah. No, I would never. I can't do that. So even when I do
in documentaries, people do that. And I think it's permissible. Yeah,
in a documentary. But for me, if I do a 3/4 angle, the actor has to walk with their head tilted at a 3/4 angle. And if I want to get a coverage, I have to just do my coverage also from that 3/4 angle, because their head has to be facing the same direction that it was in the wide shot.
So funny.
The only other thing I can do is shoot an insert, but that insert has to be connected to what they're talking about, or else it just seems like so random, you know?
Yeah.
Or they're like a cutaway or B-roll or something. So, but if like the thing I just shot, they're talking about like software and how it works, it's not like you could cut to something like maybe statistics or, you know, I don't know.
Sure.
Anyhow, time your scripts, make them shorter than they need to be. Okay. Last big topic. Then I think I have a couple small ones, but I just went to Mexico City to shoot these commercials of said actress looking at camera, walking around, 3-day shoot, but we only had her for 2 days, which again, when all the scripts have your actor talking straight to camera.
Sure. It's like a lot of inserts on that.
There isn't a lot to shoot on that 3rd day. Yeah. Which I was lucky, because that 3rd day I had to leave set at 4 p.m. to get to the airport, to get back to LA to shoot something else the next day. My flight was delayed. And and I got, as I told you, I got very sick in Mexico. So
the listeners did not know that though.
But my first thing to say about when you are working out of the country, and you know, you worked in Russia and stuff.
Sure.
You kind of have to be a little less adventurous than if you're going on a vacation, right? For fun. Because, and I was very careful about what I ate. Everyone said, don't drink the tap water. And I didn't. I brushed my teeth with bottled water. I did the whole thing. Didn't drink ice. Still got crazy sick, very dehydrated.
It's about food prep too, as part of it. I think when I was in Mexico for my honeymoon, and I think some salsa got me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But when you have a job to do there, you can't be like, sorry, I'm going to be in bed all day, or sorry, I have to be next to within 5 feet of a toilet.
You're texting the producer, like, can you go to Home Depot and get one of those orange buckets?
Yeah. No, I literally, I got to bring an extra pair of underwear to work just in case something happens.
Did you? Real talk.
I brought, both the underwear and shorts.
Yeah.
I was like, my stomach is not under my control right now, and I have to shoot a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. When you're traveling for work, do not party before the shoot. You can do whatever you want after the shoot, but you're there for work. So just keep that in mind. Just be ready for work, because it's very easy to get messed up when your diet is completely different.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up dehydration as well. Like, so you've probably been flying, you've probably been drinking, right? Like if you have to go to like a client dinner, even if you're not overdoing it and know your tolerance and all of that, if you can combine lack of sleep, dehydration, plus alcohol, and frankly coffee as well, you're asking for it,
not
for sure.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing, and I'm curious how it worked in Russia, was like in Mexico City, when you plan the shoot, like it was like a DGA shoot. I brought a DGA AD from LA, but there was another, I had my first AD, but there was the Mexican crew had their first AD, and the two first ADs are like buddies. They do the schedule together, and like my first AD will say something, and then the Mexican first AD will repeat it in Spanish to the whole crew.
They're your de facto translator, basically.
Yeah. But they're also like doing other AD stuff. They're locking things up. They're being quiet. They're talking to all the background, like where they go. They're like, getting that. They're really helping run the production, but on the Spanish side of things. And my AD is running production on the English side of things. Did you have that in Russia?
It wasn't DGA, so I just had a bilingual AD.
Oh, right.
But the thing that...
But he spoke good English?
She spoke great English. Yeah, for sure.
But they spoke good English? But they spoke good English?
They spoke good English, yeah. The thing about, I think, European shooting in particular, but international shooting in general, is that, we're lucky as ignorant Americans, English is kind of like the common language, more or less. Like people in Russia learned English not to speak to Americans, but to be able to speak to basically other Europeans, all of whom learned English for kind of the same reason. Do you know what I mean?
So you felt like most of your crew knew English?
A good number of them did. Yeah, for sure. The thing that struck me that I wonder if you have dealt with in your travels is like you and I both kind of stylistically, we're kind of nice. We're pretty soft. Like we would be diplomatic with how we would ask a crew to do a certain thing, or a crew member. Like you would never be like, tear that thing down, it looks stupid. You'd be like, hey, I think that maybe we should go ahead and, can we please change this? Right. Would be your version of it. Even if you were trying to be direct, you wouldn't bark orders.
Yeah. I would never bark orders, but I have gotten like, as the stakes have become higher,
sure,
I get a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
I told you we need to do it this way.
Or no, we said we had agreed on this yesterday. We said there's going to be plants in this elevator hallway, and there aren't now. And then they'll be like, oh, well, sorry, we didn't think they look good. I'm like, well, can I be in on that decision? Can we put some plants in? You're like, well, we ended up not getting them. Well, like, do you want us to get them? And I'll be like, yeah, please get, Yeah.
Like, but you even in your acting out of, you said, yeah, please get them.
Well, yeah,
right. Is a good way, good way of illustrating it. Right. And I'm similar in that way. My AD at a certain point, I was like kind of raising my voice, like projecting to the room, like, hey, we need to move over here or whatever. And she's like, she didn't say hold my beer, but she might as well have. And she just starts screaming at these people, just screaming. And they did it. They it was like I had been whispering
right
for a half a day. And finally someone turned the volume up to a normal level, and they were like, oh yeah, okay. And I remember my DP who, where we were good pals, and also he'd worked a lot internationally. He was like, yes, this reminds me of many international jobs. Like there's that crew, and I don't know if it's true for every crew and wherever, but that crew needed to be spoken to in a more direct, louder, I would say angrier sounding way.
Right.
Did you notice any discordance between the way you communicated and the way your AD communicated with the crew?
Yeah, but I think part of the job of the AD is to do that.
Sure. To be the heavy.
And like, I if the AD is nowhere to be found, I'll be like, hey, can we get this art? Where's art? Like, can we do this? But if the AD is anywhere nearby, I'll be like, hey, can we get this done? Can we have this done? Can we have this done? Can we get these people to move over here? Like, I am so happy to not be the person to corral people.
Sure.
To me, the AD is like the leader of the movement of people on set, and I do not want to be like yelling at people,
Yeah, 100%. But I think sometimes it's like you need to be able to say like, this picture needs to be here, and this, there's a version of it that's still directing, basically. Like that's like telling the art crew to like, you know what I think it was? I think I needed them to like get they were lighting in a part of the room that was going to be in our next shot. And I was just like, guys, this is where we're going to point the camera right here.
Right.
And that's when Sasha was just like,
the location I was in was like it's this giant office building, but you could hear any noise anyone made anywhere, you could hear anywhere else. And our name actor was like very incredibly unhappy when people spoke during her take, which I 1,000,000% understand. But like, it's just the acoustics. Like literally people are like, hey, can you hand me that? And she'd be like, can we start over? Why are people talking?
Yeah.
So, and it was like really hard technical language and blocking and stuff. Like I did not envy her in any way. But we'd be like, hey, can you tell the crew to be quiet? And then the Mexican AD would be like, chicos, everyone, like, silencio, yeah. But I don't know. It never got like uncomfortable. I mean, the thing I noticed that I know is true because from what you've told me is like the size of the crew is just bonkers. If in the US, I would have like 60 to 70 people on the crew like this. In Mexico, it was like there were like 200 people there. I mean, it's just so many people.
What?
Like people I wouldn't, I didn't recognize them like on day 3 because also we were filming on the 12th floor, and I was like, oh, are we all house power? Like, how are we doing this on the 12th story of this giant office building? And they're like, no, we have a generator. I was like, where's the generator? They're like, oh, it's on the first floor. It's like, how did we get the electricity up here? Like, oh, the guys got here at 5 a.m. They just ran cable like all up the 12 stories.
Oh God.
Yeah. I mean, and we had like, they couldn't even fit a scissor lift. So they just build scaffolding to put lights on the, like 30 feet up in the air. It's just like, what? You guys they're like, yeah, you just bring 10 people. And we had all these people like kind of levitating in the spot. And they're like, every person that's flying, they have 2 people holding the rope, And I was like, can we have one more person fly? They're like, yeah, we just need to get 3 more people. I'm like, you need that many people? Like, yeah, it's fine. It's not expensive.
Yeah. Well, and also like, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're literally holding somebody up in the air.
That was to me the craziest thing is the size of the crew is just like so big. The biggest thing, like where the advantage was the size of the crew, like the resources, like, hey, we want this person to fly and this person to wear a harness and this person to do this and that and whatever. Like they were lighting things so fast, It's like, yep, we got 10 people working on lighting over here, and we got 20 people doing art.
In Mexico City, I've never shot there, but I've heard that the crews are all top notch. So it's like, it's kind of the best of both worlds in that way. Like the dollar stretches really far, and also the craftspeople are,
Our
great.
DP like shot House of the Dragon and Fallout,
Yeah.
So like top notch people, and they're so fat. They're like, what color do you want this wall? Like a giant wall. And I'm like, I don't know, gray. They're like, great. Like 30 minutes later, it's great. And I'm like, are we worried that this is not our wall? They're like, we'll paint it back. Don't worry. Like, it's just everything is fast. But the advantages of that, where I found the disadvantages, were just like these minor cultural differences stylistically. For me, it was like the most evident in wardrobe and in art direction. Which, are seen. It's supposed to be like these global corporations that could be anywhere in the world, but really like the company is American. It's like a Silicon Valley like tech company, and like the office.
It's for an American audience too, right?
Yeah, they I think they want to dub some stuff, and we had a a card that said happy birthday on it. And they're like, we can't have any English writing on anything because we want this to be like international. But that said, the stylistic basis was American. And our wardrobe that we got was just like so far from anything any American person would ever wear in an office. Like for the men, it was like super high-waisted, super baggy pants. You know, the women were all like, had model outfits. Like the men had like super fat ties and like brown corduroy jackets, like oversized like blazers.
It's like cool. It's very cool, but it's not.
It looks like a professor from like a period Alexander Payne movie. You know, like everyone looked like they were in the Holdovers.
Do you feel like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Because
or like in the Phantom Thread, you know.
I thought you were going to maybe say like, because young people wear clothing. Now I feel old where I'm like, oh, what you're wearing is ugly and silly. And it's just like new young trends. Do you know what I mean? Like high, like baggy pants, all of that stuff could just be very trendy, which doesn't match
we
what
had
you're
like
aiming
tech
for either.
office workers that are in their mid 30s, you know, it wasn't like teenagers. Like, I know.
You're
like,
just like, oh, can you put somebody in some khakis, please?
Yeah. Even in the casting, like every single female auditioner, 100% of them, they were all told to wear like, you know, office wear. 100% of the women had a bare midriff. Like 100%. Like I guess this is just how women in Mexico dress to the office, which is fine, but it just does not at all fit this. So I had to really micromanage every piece of clothing. Like, and I'd be like, how about something that looks like it's from the Gap, like a sweatshirt with a few stripes on it, or a turtleneck, or like a blazer with like a button down. They also like almost no men wear t-shirts in Mexico. It's crazy. Like they do on the crew, you know, or if you're doing like a real kind of dirty job, but like go to a restaurant in Mexico with Mexican people in it, no one is wearing t-shirts. It's just like not an article of clothing that people wear out. So, but in America, it's like a very common thing. Jeans, t-shirt, blazer. It's a cool outfit. It's an LA outfit, you know, you would wear it to a tech office, a kind of a workwear jacket. Anyway, so that was like interesting while I was dealing with trying to get,
just to kind of circle up on it. What makes me think, of like, oftentimes the shorthand that I will use when I'm trying to describe characters is I'll just kind of name stores that they shop at. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's just a quick thing to be like, okay, this person's a little more Banana Republic and a little more Gap. And that doesn't mean literally go to Gap or go to Banana Republic. You can go to Target for both of those, but you have a clearer aim. You can aim at a clearer target. I mean, those are both brands that are international, so that might have worked in Mexico City. But like,
I did mention those. Well, not Target, but like Gap. Sure. Didn't get me very far. The closest we got to was H&M and Zara. And if you know those brands at all, like Zara especially, it does skew very European and almost like kind of top shoppy type, like just things that are just a little too on trend to be like someone that works at Amazon, you know, corporate.
J. Crew is really what you're trying to say. You're looking for stuff that's a little bit more like, timeless and Americana. Basically.
Even if you like watch Girls, you know, there's the episodes where she works for like GQ magazine. Lena Dunham, like what they wear there, like you can be stylish without being kind of,
you're saying office casual,
overly trendy. Yeah. The other thing that I said, art direction, is like we were setting up one company to be like a finance company, and like our like art team they brought like a vase with flowers in it, like a cream colored vase with kind of like these pastel-y flowers in it, to put like on the front desk reception area. And it's like, it was so hard for me to explain to them why like the company from Succession wouldn't have a cream colored vase with like pastel colors, pastel flowers in it. They're like, what? It's like it's like upscale. It's kind of like nice flowers. I'm like, yeah, but it's in America, this like belongs on like a Motel 6, you know, like a high-end financial place wouldn't have that. And like, it was just all those little details that were like they're just different there. Like he brought all this wall art for this, like we were building 3 different businesses, and one I wanted to look kind of like a Succession kind of high-end finance thing, right? Wall Street type of company, JP Morgan, whatever. And like he brought all this wall art. He's like, don't worry, it's all AI generated. Okay, cool, whatever. But it was like pink and blue. And I'm just like, in America, no finance company would have like pink artwork on the wall.
Black and white photography, or like it makes me think of like William Morris, or like the agencies that are like really trying to show that they are wealthy have like famous art on the walls where you're that's $1 million painting or whatever.
Yeah, or like a famous photographer, or like a Terry Richardson or something. Yeah. So anyhow, that was like a thing, and I don't quite feel like we got it 100%. I'm trying to like kind of VFX some art direction things, but they would do these giant things. We'd take a room where I'd be like, this room is totally wrong. And they're like, don't worry, we're going to change every single column and wall. And they're like literally building new walls on top of the walls just to make them have different textures.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of the trade-offs of shooting out of the country. Like you can do all this crazy stuff, but you have to really be on top of like any stylistic choice. From casting to wardrobe to art direction, all super important. The one last thing I want to say, so I had 3 shoots over the last week, which is a lot for me. I usually am not shooting that much, but every single shoot had a DIT with a tent. Every single shoot, it was 3 different DPs. Every single shoot, the DP was in the tent with the DIT for the entire shoot. And if you're a DP listening to this podcast right now, I just want to say personally, I hate that.
Stop it. Yeah.
It's like, well, I want the DP to be close to me, and I want to be close to the actors. Right. Yeah. And so when you're in the tent, sure, you're dialing things in, you got your dimmer board, you got your iPad, and you're talking to the gaffer and the key grip, and you're making all the lighting look perfect. But like, honestly, like to me, I assume a DP is going to make the lighting look nice, but I really want you to be next to me when we're choosing lenses, choosing where the next shot is, like discovering new things, like being like a buddy team that is like figuring out how to lens this thing. And like, I know maybe there's a camera operator. So each one of those shoots had a separate camera operator, which is fine. And I'll talk to the operator, but those operators aren't pitching me ideas, they're just kind of executing what I tell them.
I will say, yes, agree. I 100% agree with all of this. It is nice. And I think this is kind of more of a TV thing. At a certain point, they are pitching you ideas. And I remember realizing like, an operator, I had underestimated what an operator is and does. They are a pretty significant part of the creative decision-making in team. If they're of a certain level and you have a rapport with them and all of that, like it is kind of a way of delegating some of the stuff that you're describing. But I agree. And I think, for the most part on a commercial or an indie film or whatever, you hired the DP, you didn't hire the operator.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kind of the same way I'd love to weigh in on more like who our gaffer is, honestly, like being able to like talk to people and like, if you're going to be in the tent and I'm going to be talking to some of your department heads because you're in the tent, then I should have a say on who these people are and or have a working relationship with them in a certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't want to have to know who the gaffer is and who the key grip is and who else. Like I want just the DP to be next to me so I can be like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if there was like this shot looks kind of flat, like let's look at the monitor together. Should we add a slash of sunlight on the wall? Should we do like a color? Should we change the angle a little bit? Should we like work on the backlight? Like how can we bring this shot to life? What do you think this camera move, and like when they're away. So now I'm on one of my shoots, it was all Steadicam. So I'm talking to the Steadicam operator, but he wasn't involved in the prep. He didn't see my treatment. He doesn't know the goal. He's probably never read the script. In one of the shoots, the DP was operating, but he had the wheels, and he was in the tent operating just with the monitor, just like a mile away from me. Yeah. And the other shoot, we also had a separate operator. So Anyway, if you're listening to me, you're a DA. Like I hired the DP that shot Succession because I want him to help me shoot something that looks like Succession, you know, or I hired whatever, the DP that shot this movie because I want her to like help me bring that same emotion out. And she's gone or he's gone. Like, why did I hire them? It's like I'm on an island again.
And also, I love going into that DIT tent. I want to dial it in with you guys. Let's figure it out together, team. Yeah. You know, like
when we're not an
shooting.
Hour behind.
Yeah, exactly. Wrap, lunch, hop on in there, cool off.
Yeah.
In between setups, it's fine too.
I talked about my DIT trick, right? With the Apple iCloud album.
No.
Oh, it happened to me in Canada. I did this shoot. The DIT would, do a grade on each shot and they would put them on an Apple, like an iCloud album and share them with me. And then I would add like all the agency people and client.
Yeah.
It's sick. You get, as soon as you're done with the setup, you have a high res, 4K frame, color graded in your phone. And one of my shoots I did, I think it was one of my Popeyes shoots, they used those frames from the Apple Cloud to do like digital marketing and stuff.
Sure.
They're like, who owns this? And I was like, you own this.
Yeah, it's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I think we've talked about similar versions. There's a DIT who I've worked with many times who are like, one of the things like producers love is that he'll like do that basically, but not via iCloud. The iCloud of it all is really nice.
Right, because it's automatically just coming into your iPhone.
Yeah.
Because some of them will like airdrop it or someone's like, here's a Dropbox
link.
and
You
I'm
can
like,
email at the end of the day or whatever. And that's wonderful. Link. But like real time, and the reason that's cool is not just that it's neat for you to be able to see these shots and to know things are going well and show people, but like giving the client and agency ammunition to talk about how well things are going, how good this looks. They can show their team, their bosses. That takes the heat off them, which takes the heat off of us.
Yeah. By the way, this reminds me, I had a stills guy in Mexico. I feel like a lot of directors are kind of annoyed by the stills people because they're like, wait, we can't move on. We got to take stills.
Yeah. Sure.
But this guy came in, he had this Hasselblad digital camera. His stills were so beautiful. At first I was like, this stills guy sucks. He doesn't say anything. He's just like, just taking pictures, not even talking. I was like, how on earth can these be any good? And then he showed me some of them and they were like, I'm like, these stills are better than what we're shooting in the commercial. They're so good. And it makes me so happy because I'm like under a lot of pressure that this company is spending like $1 or $2 million or whatever on this whole thing. And what if they don't like what I shot? But if now that I see these stills, I'm like, worst case scenario, these stills are freaking sick, Yeah. So support your stills people because they're kind of your insurance policy for the entire set,
Heck yeah.
Entire shoot. Just a tiny tip.
Make it your endorsement, Oren.
It's not my endorsement. Did you know that if you do business in Los Angeles County, you have to pay an LA County business tax? One reason to not incorporate is because if you incorporate, you do have to pay a county tax for running a business there. But in LA County, if your business grosses less than $300,000 for the year, they have a creative artist exemption. So if you've made less than $300,000 gross for your business, then you do not owe any tax if you work in the arts, which we do work in the arts, like filmmaking is the arts. And also on top of that, something I didn't learn until today, you only have to count the money that you made in LA. So if you went to Atlanta and shot something, you went to Canada and shot something, you don't have to count that. However, and this is why I bring this up, because the lesson I learned today after I incorporated in 2015. So for 9 years, I have never done my business taxes late, but I missed them this year. I thought I'd already registered and I missed them. If you miss the deadline, which is like March 1st or something of the year, you are no longer eligible for that creative artist exemption.
Oh, bummer.
So it doesn't matter how little you made, you owe taxes. So if you have a business, a filmmaking business in Los Angeles County, just make sure to register your business tax renewal. before March every year. Put it on your calendar. I'd put it on my Google Calendar now that like I renewal every year because I owed LA County a ton of money and I've never owed them before. And it's only because I filed late. So very frustrating thing that I learned. Anyhow, that's all I have to say. LA business tax. I know we're an hour into the podcast, so I threw it at the end because if we've lost people, it's okay.
Well, another good one, Oren. Do you have a few more minutes to hang out and endorse?
Yes, I do.
Unpaid endorsement.
So my unpaid endorsement is the thrill ride, the truly insane, the hyper art directed, hyper stylized
George Miller film. Furiosa.
Babe 2, Pig in the City.
Babe 2, Pig in the City. Did he do the first one too?
He produced the first one and wrote it, but did not direct it. And I looked the director up, a man named Chris Noonan. I didn't do a ton. And Babe 1 is was up for Best Picture the year that it came out. It's really, truly great. Mm-hmm. That one's awesome. Babe 2, Pig in the City takes a crazy hard left.
Really?
Truly. So for younger listeners or people who don't care about children's movies, Babe 1 is like really charming. It's like got a very overt pro-vegetarian agenda.
It's a live action movie that takes place on a farm with talking animals.
Yeah. And like Paddington, Babe is a catalyst for growth through his kindness. Babe doesn't do a ton of growing in the movie. Babe is just like a pure sweet pig. The same themes and ideas. Babe 2, Pig in the City, within the first, minute and a half or so, Babe, the sweet pig, has put his beloved farmer Hoggett in traction. Like literally in a cartoonish but truly horrific sequence, Babe drops a pool pump onto Farmer Hoggett and he is paralyzed. And so then the farmer's wife and Babe have to go to the city to raise enough money to save the farm. And they meet a gang of pickpocketing monkeys. They meet Mickey Rooney, who is a clown. Babe then, in a performance with the pickpocketing monkeys and Mickey Rooney the clown, they're at a children's hospital and Babe accidentally sets fire to the children's hospital, which in turn gives Mickey Rooney a heart attack and he goes over to the hospital and we never see him again. A dog goes to heaven. It's truly bleak. It's truly bleak. And when you see that movie, because George Miller also did Happy Feet. Basically, George Miller's career goes Mad Max, Mad Max, Mad Max, children's movies, Mad Max, Mad Max. And you're like, how, what is going on? Right? Like,
well, bookending.
Yeah, exactly. Happy Feet, the Babe movies. But, Mad Max, he got to start. He was like, George Miller was like a trauma surgeon. Like the reason that Mad Max is so grotesque is because like he was like just sewing Australians up who'd like been in terrible motorcycle accidents to raise enough money to go make a movie. So truly twisted. Babe 2, you see that movie and it unlocks everything for you. You see how it all works together. It's great. In honor of Furiosa, which comes out this weekend.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah.
Speaking
to
of
witness it,
movies or storytelling, I still have this Audible original podcast. Years in the making that, mainly my writing partner is doing a lot of the work on. Mm-hmm. We're still cracking the story. One of the previous crossover podcasts we've done is with Meg and Lorien from the Screenwriting Life. And their last 2 episodes that came out, I found really helpful.
That podcast is so good.
It was like very kind of, listicle-y. Last 2 episodes, a 2-part, the 10 common traps that will kill your script, part 1 and part 2. It's episode 192 and 193. And, it was just like those things about character motivation, about trying to show wants and needs through action. It's about voices. It's about how to lean into genre tropes without being cliche, all the things. So I listened to both the episodes, and I immediately told my writing partner, oh, you should listen to these episodes because we're struggling with a lot of the same things, end of act 2 type of stuff, and kind of why we care about this character and making characters, active instead of reactive. So anyway, Screenwriting Life, episodes 192 and 193, 10 common traps that will kill your script. Really enjoyed them.
I realized we do have one other one.
Yeah.
So Rick Rubin has a podcast called Tetragrammaton, and it's, more or less your standard creativity interview podcast. If you like Rick Rubin, you're going to like this podcast. But he had Chris Pine on just recently. And Oren, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the trades, but Chris Pine made a movie called Pool Man.
Yeah, that he directed, right?
That he directed. And it did not get into any major film festivals. And
right.
I think because Chris Pine is a Chris, and he's handsome and famous and rich, it gave critics a bit of an incentive to be pretty ruthless when reviewing this movie. It got trashed in a way that would hurt anyone's feelings. And they talk about it. He's pretty eloquent and pretty into making movies and thoughtful and all of that. So it's a conversation that can be a little heady or a little actory at times, for sure. But to just listen to somebody dealing with the realities of loving the movie that he made truly, and being very surprised and hurt by the reaction from both critics and people is a really interesting listen, for sure. And not at all self-pitying, it's a pretty stark, frank conversation of I don't know how to deal with this,
Have you seen the movie?
I have not, no. And probably won't. But you know what? I have seen that first Star Trek movie a bunch of times. I really love it.
Oh, yeah. And J.J. Abrams is going to get his break one day.
Yeah. The Chris Pine episode of Tetragrammaton.
Cool. Well, if you have any thoughts on anything we've spoken about, please email us. We're justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can also...
Please, we need the attention.
Validation. You can DM us on Instagram or @justshootitpod. We'd love to hear from you. We have gotten a few really nice emails recently. We got some nice Instagram posts. Tag us if you feel like we've ever inspired you in any way. It really means a lot to us. You can find me. I'm on Instagram @okaplan. And I famously answer almost every message sent to me.
And I'm @Mr. Matt Oren across all social media. I'm getting better at that. I'm into it a little bit more. This episode was edited by Noah Bayshore. Thanks, Noah, and produced by him as well, along with additional producing by Tyler Small. And you are listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jazar. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.